Somewhere in this house, a staircase climbs straight into a ceiling. A door opens onto a 20-foot drop with nothing on the other side. The woman who built it spent 38 years and never once explained why. For more than a century, every book, every documentary, every tour guide has offered the same explanation. Sarah Winchester arrived in California and started building because a Boston medium warned her she was haunted by the spirits of everyone ever killed by a Winchester rifle. Keep building forever, the story goes, or the spirits will come for you next. But here's what nobody tells you on the tour. When historians actually dug into Sarah's letters, her estate records, and the physical history of the house itself, the explanation they found was completely different from the legend, and honestly it's more interesting. We're going to go through the real history of Sarah Winchester, what actually happened in that house, what people still report inside it today, and then we're going to do something most videos skip. We're going to check whether any of it holds up. Because there's one thing about this story, and the thing almost nobody realizes, that changes how you see the entire house. I'll get to it at the end. Let's start at the beginning. Sarah Lockwood Pardee grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, the daughter of a carpenter. She married William Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, on September 30th, 1862. By all accounts, they were happy, and then the losses started. Their only child, Annie Pardee Winchester, was born on July 12th, 1866. Tragically, the child died a mere 5.5 weeks after her birth from marasmus, a severe form of malnutrition where an infant simply cannot absorb nutrition no matter how much it feeds. Sarah and William retreated into grief and poured themselves into architecture, designing and building a home together on Prospect Hill. It seemed like a way through. Then, 15 years later, her husband William Winchester died in 1881 from tuberculosis. In the span of 15 years, Sarah had buried her only child and her husband. She was 41 years old, alone, and suddenly one of the wealthiest women in America. After William's death, upset and grieving, Mrs. Winchester reportedly consulted a spiritualist. This medium informed her that the victims killed by the Winchester rifles her family manufactured were seeking revenge by taking the lives of her family. "Move west," the medium told her. "Start building and never stop." So she did. In 1884, Sarah Winchester purchased an 8-room farmhouse in California's Santa Clara Valley. And then the construction began. And it did not stop in earnest for the rest of her life. From 1884 to 1922, workers built continuously, creating 161 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, and architectural impossibilities like stairs leading to ceilings and doors opening into walls. What started as an 8-room farmhouse became, over 38 years, the world's longest home renovation, stopping only when Sarah passed on September 5, 1922. Now the official tour version of events says all of this strangeness was intentional, a maze to confuse and trap the spirits pursuing her. Staircases to nowhere, doors that open onto drops, rooms within rooms. The legend says Sarah designed every bit of it on purpose to keep the dead from finding her, and the details they give you on the tour are genuinely wild. She was reportedly obsessed with the number 13, staircases with 13 steps, ceilings with 13 panels, chandeliers with 13 lights. When the seance room's locked safe was finally opened, it contained only the baby shoes of her daughter Annie. The seance room itself had 1 door in and 3 doors out, and according to staff accounts, Sarah was the only person who ever held a key. She reportedly entered it at midnight, wearing one of 13 different robes she kept specifically for the ritual, to commune with spirits who would tell her what to build next. She reportedly slept in a different bedroom every single night, never repeating a room 2 nights in a row, the theory being that even the spirits chasing her couldn't predict where she'd be. And the house itself, according to guests and staff over the decades, never really went quiet after she died. Staff and tour guides describe phantom hammering echoing through empty halls at night, as if the building never got the message that construction was finished. Cold spots in the ballroom, where Sarah once reportedly held seances, sudden temperature drops with no explanation, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Multiple guides and guests over the decades have described a shadowy female figure resembling Sarah herself, still wandering the maze she built, vanishing the moment anyone notices her. She's never seen for long. Whoever spots her says the same thing. She's just there, at the end of a hallway, or standing at the bottom of one of those staircases that lead nowhere, and then she isn't. Gone before anyone gets a second look. As if the woman who spent 38 years building this house never quite finished walking through it. Two rooms in particular come up again and again in accounts like these. The first is the basement, genuinely one of only two places in the entire estate where you can walk from the foundation up through the whole structure in one continuous space. Multiple visitors and staff over the years report seeing the apparition of a man pushing a wheelbarrow through the underground passageways down there, believed to be the ghost of a former gardener, still going about his rounds decades after the job ended. The second is a small room near the top of the south turret called the Witch's Cap, named for its steep, conical ceiling. You can only reach it through a passage with a ceiling barely 5 feet high, and once you're inside, the room does something strange to sound. Stand in the center and speak, and your own voice bounces back distorted, as if the room is answering you. Some accounts say Sarah held seances there herself, and would emerge the next morning with new construction plans for her foreman. Staff still describe it as one of the most unsettling rooms in the house. Some have refused to go in at all, saying the spiritual weight of the space is too much. One of the more specific accounts on record involves a maintenance worker in the 1970s, remembered only as Denny. He reported being chased by the sound of phantom footsteps, up 3 separate flights of stairs all the way to the roof, where he found absolutely no one there. A more recent account, equally unsettling, happened during a 2016 tour. A guide was walking a group through the Daisy bedroom, describing exactly what happened there in 1906, how Sarah was trapped for hours while the walls shifted around her. Right as she finished the story, a deep, tired sigh came from the hallway behind the group, almost like a breath of relief after being let out. The guide turned to check. Nobody was there, just dust catching the light. Which brings us to that night in 1906 itself. According to accounts, Sarah was trapped in one of the rooms for several hours before being freed by staff during the earthquake. The shifting walls meant the door was stuck in place, blocked by rubble. Scratches at the door jamb still show how she tried to break her way out. She believed the earthquake was the spirit's punishment for lavishing too much attention on the front of the house. So she sealed the front 30 rooms and retreated to the back of the mansion for the rest of her life. And Harry Houdini himself visited the mansion on Halloween night 1924, 2 years after Sarah's death, reportedly to attend a seance and investigate the stories firsthand. Even the greatest escape artist in the world wanted to see if something was still in there. So, that's the legend. And look, it's a great story. It's one of the most compelling haunted house narratives in American history, but here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part I promised you at the top. When historians actually went looking for the evidence behind all of it, they found something the tour doesn't really advertise. Not a hoax, just a different, quieter kind of story than the one that got sold to tourists. In 2010, a history teacher named Mary Jo Ignoffo published the first full-length biography of Sarah Winchester. After nearly 2 decades digging through letters and estate records most people never bothered to look at, what she found didn't erase the strangeness of the house. It just gave it a different origin. Take the staircases to nowhere and the doors that open onto drops, the two most famous, most photographed features of the entire mansion. The tour tells you Sarah built them on purpose to confuse spirits chasing her through the halls. What actually happened? In 1906, a massive earthquake tore through the Bay Area and took the top 3 floors of Sarah's 7-story home down with it. Instead of rebuilding the damaged upper levels, she simply had workers board them off where they stood. Doorways that once opened into grand hallways were left opening onto air. Staircases that once climbed to a 4th floor were left climbing to nothing, not a maze built for ghosts. The scars of a disaster she chose to live around instead of repair. And the name itself, Winchester Mystery House, wasn't hers either. She called the place Lanada Villa. It was the investors who bought the estate 5 months after her death who renamed it, because a woman quietly grieving her family doesn't sell tickets. A mystery does. Here's what Ignoffo's research actually paints instead. A woman who was, by every account, sharper and more deliberate than the legend gives her credit for. She hired staff from every race at a time when that wasn't the fashion. Her head gardener was Japanese, during a period of serious anti-Asian sentiment in California. She paid her workers well and financed housing nearby so their families could stay close. She funded a tuberculosis hospital that treated patients regardless of their background or ability to pay. None of that makes it into the ghost tour. So no, there's no solid documentation that regular seances happened in that room, and the famous 13 hooks tour guides point to were reportedly added by the attraction itself long after Sarah was gone. That part of the legend doesn't hold up. But here's what none of that actually explains. It doesn't explain the sigh a group of guests heard come out of an empty hallway in 2016, right as their guide finished telling them how Sarah was trapped there in the dark for hours. It doesn't explain why staff still describe cold spots in a ballroom that hasn't hosted a real gathering in over 100 years. Knowing why the staircases go nowhere doesn't tell you why people still feel like they're being watched when they stand at the bottom of one. The earthquake explains how the house got its shape. It doesn't explain everything people say happens inside it. Here's what we actually know. Sarah Winchester lost her entire family. She inherited a fortune built on rifles. She moved to California, bought a farmhouse, and spent 38 years building, never explaining why, never writing publicly about spirits, never calling it a mystery. She named it Llanada Villa. She called it home. The staircases to nowhere came from an earthquake. The shallow steps came from arthritis. The seance room's most famous evidence was installed by the tourist attraction, not by her. I can explain almost all of it. I can't explain why a maintenance worker in the 1970s ran from footsteps on an empty staircase all the way to a roof with nobody on it. I can't tell you who that woman is at the bottom of the stairs that go nowhere, the one who's there and then isn't. Sarah Winchester built a house nobody could fully explain while she was alive. 100 years later, I still can't either. If you've toured the place yourself, or you've got a theory about what's in that basement, or who's still walking those halls, I want to hear it. Drop it below.